everyone. Hey everyone, welcome. I am Adrienne. Hey everyone, I'm Adrienne. Welcome. Hey y'all, I'm Adrienne. Thank you so much for... Hey everyone, I am so glad you're here. Hey y'all, I'm Adrienne. I'm so glad you're here. Today we're going to be talking about how to get that awesome blurry background, also known as depth of field. I know that you have seen other YouTubers who have that blurry background, and you've also probably seen it in some photography. It's really easy to do with smartphones now. You just swipe over to the portrait mode and it just kind of does things for you. But today we're going to be talking about how you can actually create that effect using your own camera. But what is depth of field? Like, really? So depth of field is the range of distance that is in focus in your image. Your image has a foreground. I don't really have a foreground in my image. And then you have what is in focus, which would be me, the subject. And then you have a background. Depth of field travels along that Z-axis back into your image, and it's referencing the distance of what is in focus. I think that it's a good idea to have a shallow depth of field. How shallow is really up to you. Mine isn't all that extreme. My background is a little bit blurry while I'm in focus, but it's a good idea because it tells your audience exactly what to look at. So they're going to be focusing on the subject of the image, exactly what you want them to be seeing without you having to tell them to not get distracted by other things in the frame. There are two things on your camera that you can manipulate in order to achieve a shallow depth of field. One is aperture and the other is focal length. The two questions you want to ask yourself are how low can I get my aperture and how long can I get my lens? Now, when it comes to aperture, it might be helpful for you to think about how your eye works. When you have a lot of light, your pupil gets really small. And when there is not a lot of light, your pupil gets really big. And your aperture in your camera works the same way. When you're in a low light setting, like inside, you're going to want to open up that aperture really big. And when you are, say, outside in the middle of the day and it's sunny, you want to close the aperture down really small. Your aperture is measured in f-stops. The bigger the aperture, the lower the f-stop number. The smaller the aperture, the higher the f-stop number. So to achieve a shallow depth of field, you want a low f-stop. You want your aperture to be really big, really wide open. The other thing you want to think about is focal length, the length of your lens. A wide angle lens is going to keep everything in focus. Whereas if you zoom in closer, if you're at 55 millimeters, 85 millimeters, or even higher than that, you will start to achieve some shallow depth of field. The last thing you need to think about when you're setting up your shot has nothing to do with your camera. If you want your background to be blurry to any degree, you cannot be sitting right up against it. You need to have space between yourself and the background. I have maybe 5 feet of space between myself and the wall. If I could, I'd have more. But the room that I'm shooting in just doesn't allow for that. But 5 feet of space gets me a background that's a little bit blurry. And so you spend this whole video focusing on me and my face and my hands and hopefully the words that I'm saying. You also want to think about this if you're doing something like an overhead shot. If you have a product sitting on the tabletop and then you're filming overhead like this, the tabletop is not going to be blurry because your item, your product, your subject is sitting right on top of it. The only thing I want you to be careful of is going too shallow in your depth of field. You could turn your f-stop all the way down to a 1.4. You can make sure that you are focused on your eyes, and then you record yourself talking like this, and you go back and you look at your footage and you realize that your eye is in focus, but your nose isn't. Because your aperture was so wide open, there wasn't enough distance on that z-axis, your z-axis, to make sure that your eye is in focus and your nose is also in focus. So just be aware that it is possible to go too shallow and you won't get the image that you want. Aperture really is one of the most important settings on your camera because it controls the style of your image. It controls the depth of field that you have. It controls how bright your image is. It does a lot of different things. So I really want you to try to practice with it in order to become more comfortable with it. Well, that's all from me. If you'd like to see more, I hope you'll subscribe. Leave a comment below and share how much depth of field you like to have in your own shot. And I'll see you next time. Bye.